Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking through that break. If you are just tuning in for the first time, we started our show off talking about the NFLPA report card that came out, some surprising stuff in there, some major takeaways. You should all go check that out. It's really interesting. In our second segment, we continued our Offseason Files report, episode 5, this time on the Texas Rangers, the defending World Series champion. We talked about their offseason and what their 2024 season outlook kind of looks like. Segment 3, which we just finished, we broke down some major things in Mel Kiper's mock draft 2.0 that came out earlier today. And in this segment, we are going to finish off our show with some quarterback news and questions. There's some major players, not free agents like Kirk Cousins, but some players on teams that are seemingly about to get cut or might get cut or traded or something like that, that we are going to talk a little bit about where they might go, how that might affect draft season and the rest of the offseason and 2024. But before we get too far into this segment, I'd like to remind everybody that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you are right now, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. Your message will scroll across the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little talk about it, have a little chat. Again, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. But let's get right into this fourth segment. And like I kind of led into this segment with at the end of last segment, one of those quarterbacks is Daniel Jones. And it's a really interesting situations that Daniel Jones and the Giants find themselves in. Daniel Jones coming off a season where he tore his ACL, only played 6 games, and in those 6 games he did not look very good. So he's not going to be healthy to begin the season. But he is fresh off a $40 million year contract. 4-year contract, $160 million total. But the way that contract is structured, the Giants have an out after this year. And with the 6th overall pick and a quarterback class like this one, if the Giants were going to make a move off of Daniel Jones, this is probably the year to do it. You know, you can have that guy, your rookie, sit behind him for one season, play backup for a little bit, get a little bit of experience, but not throw him into the fire immediately. You have this guy, and if you want, you can move off of Daniel Jones next season, depending on how the season goes. Either way, you're not on the hook for that much money. Now, if you do end up deciding to keep Daniel Jones for not just this season, but next season, drafting a quarterback this year obviously would not be the right decision. So there's a lot of dominoes that have to fall here. Firstly, I want to preface this discussion with he's staying with the Giants this season. There's no team that is going to take that contract for this year. And the Giants really can't cut him. There's a lot of dead cap. So, because it was a very front-loaded contract, because while the Giants were kind of forced to pay him since he won a playoff game, they did it in such a way that while having him locked up long-term, if it doesn't work out, then they have an out after year 2. So, if you are the Giants and you have your choice between getting a guy like Jaden Daniels or Drake May, depending on who the Commanders pick at 2, because the Giants probably, or the furthest they can move up is 3. If they have a guy that they really, really like, they have a guy that they really want there at 3, it might be worth it to make that move. Now, me personally, I would sit there at 6, and with all these, with the teams ahead of them, you can get an elite receiver, and we've seen that in a lot of mocks that we've gone over. You can get Rome Odunze, or you can get Malik Neighbors, whichever one you prefer. Both of those guys are game-changing talents, and putting them in an offense that desperately needs that elite receiver. They were supposed to have Darren Waller be that number one receiver as a tight end, but him being so injury prone, it didn't work out. And behind him, you have a bunch of wide receiver two and threes, Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, Sterling Shepard. None of these guys pop off the page at you. None of these guys you want in your fantasy lineup. The Giants in the NFL nowadays, you kind of need that elite receiver. So as a Giants fan, I think it's worth it. I think it's not worth it to grab a quarterback in this draft. I don't think they should move on from Daniel Jones quite yet. Like I was saying, the contract is so front loaded that holding on to him for this year is kind of a must. So giving him one more chance, I believe, is worth it. And giving him a real weapon for the first time in his career is something that could absolutely change the game. They had Kadarius Toney for a couple years, but he was always hurt. And when he saw the field for one game, he went for 200 yards. I stand by that contract, though. I think the Giants were kind of forced to do it, and extending him I was on board with, but giving him a lot of money, it's not really worth it. So front-loading it the way they did and having the out after year two, I think was the best way they could do it. And I think there's going to be a lot of contracts that are structured this way. A guy like Baker Mayfield, I believe, might get a similar contract this offseason with the Buccaneers. It's going to look like a big number. Might be 4 years for $43 million a year, something like that. $42 million a year or something. But it's going to be front loaded for those first 2 years, so that if Baker does what he had done with the Browns and kind of fall off a cliff again, the Buccaneers have an out. And I think that's a really smart way that the Giants did that. So I stand by that contract. But I don't think they should move on from him quite yet, especially with the level of talent in wide receiver at this draft at 6. Trading up, you'd have to give up a lot. So there's been a lot of discussion around that. But I say run it back one more year, and then this should be a bigger discussion next year when you have more freedom in the cap space. Thank you for the question. But some other quarterbacks that might be on the move. There was a Russell Wilson. We talked a little bit about the Broncos drafting J.J. McCarthy in the mock draft. Now, as much as I dislike J.J. McCarthy, Russell Wilson, his huge contract also is a reason why the Broncos haven't cut him yet. He signed that huge extension when he was traded there, and obviously it has not worked out. While last season was a lot better, so much better than 2 seasons ago, it wasn't quite enough for Broncos faithful, Broncos front office, Broncos coaches, Sean Payton, to be convinced in Russell Wilson. He got benched near the end of the year. It doesn't seem like he wants to be there. So where are some landing places that he could go? Russell Wilson, you go look at a team like the Vikings, who are looking for a quarterback. He is already getting paid that much money. A lot of it is guaranteed. So a team like them, who isn't going to be able to trade for Justin Fields, who isn't drafting high enough to get one of those elite prospects, at least elite quarterbacks, but is close enough to competing, they're basically a quarterback away. And it's a very eerily similar to a situation that the Broncos were in when they traded for Russell Wilson. But the Vikings aren't going to have to give up that much. And I still think Russell Wilson has some juice left in him. I still think he can turn it around. I don't think we'll see him be that elite quarterback that he was in Seattle ever again. But I think if you put him in a good situation, not that the Broncos weren't, I think that was a really, really good situation for him. But maybe just for whatever reason, he just couldn't get it. He couldn't get it done there. moving to Minnesota, I think that would be a really good fit for him. You have Justin Jefferson. If they can get the run game going a little bit, that would make their offense really, really good. You see what Nick Mullins did. He was passing for 500 yards a game. Now, he was also throwing 4 interceptions, but he was putting up numbers over there. And if you have a guy that just doesn't turn the ball over, I think the Vikings might have snuck into the playoffs last year. So I think that's one place to look out for Russell Wilson to end up joining. It'd be a smaller contract, but I think that'd be a really good fit for him. And some more quarterback news that came out today. The Jets gave Zach Wilson permission to seek a trade. Now, this isn't the biggest surprise, given how things were with Zach Wilson and the Jets last season, the kind of fractured relationship he has, not just with the front office and coaching staff, but with Aaron Rodgers now, with reports that have come out in this offseason. Giving him permission to seek a trade, the Jets were not going to bring him back. He's not going to fetch a lot, but giving him a backup role, I wouldn't mind, honestly. I don't think he is going to get any trade value, really. Their Jets are probably going to have to cut him with how low his value is right now. We saw a very similar thing happen, again, with Baker Mayfield. Obviously, these are two different level of quarterbacks, but the same kind of situation. The Browns had no leverage. They had to cut him or trade him for, what was it, a 6th or 7th round pick to the Panthers when they traded him. So there's not going to be a lot of trade value on Zach Wilson here. But if he is to go somewhere, he's not going to start. He's going to have to work his way, prove that last season was just his whole first couple years were just a fluke. Now, I don't think that he really can turn his career around at this point, but I don't think it's... I can see a team... I can see him providing some value as a backup quarterback or a third-string guy on a team, maybe like an emergency quarterback, someone that can go in. And he has these performances. We've seen it a couple times last season where he played like a really good quarterback, but he's not consistent enough to be a starter in the NFL. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, or Zach Wilson if you think he will even get a job in the league. But yeah. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Tune in tomorrow. We got a lot of great stuff for you. Thank you everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.